Welcome everybody. My name is Jill Jonathan and I am with Red Wine and Blue. And so a little bit about us at Red Wine and Blue. We're a community of women who use digital media and friend-to-friend organizing to change the world one suburb at a time. And one way we do that is through conversation. And so we like to have regular conversations about all kinds of topics. And one really cool topic that we talk about is books. And I love books. So today we will be talking with Elana K. Harold, and Joe, as in JoJo from Jers, will be joining as well. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, we are so excited to talk to you. And I think when I emailed you, I told you like one of your book series that I don't think's been banned. I can imagine why it would be is A Boy Called Bat, and my son has every single one of those books. And
that makes me so happy. Actually, it has been banned.
Are you serious? Oh
yeah.
My gosh. Okay, let's start there. Why?
because the groups, it's not about the books, it's about identity. And in this case, a lovely librarian put together a list of recommended diverse reads to help other librarians diversify their collections. And she put the Bat books on them because Bat is autistic. And a group banned all the books on her list without reading them. And so the 3 Bat books were all included. They were swept up in that ban. So that was one of the earlier instances, actually, about over a year ago.
I mean, the fact that they don't even know what is in the pages of the book, and they're just
that's usually how it goes. If you want to just jump right into it, often what happens is they don't read the book. Someone will have pulled, often from outside of the community, will have gone through the book and pulled inflammatory phrases out of context, or if it's a book like Genderqueer that has, it's a graphic novel, they'll pull images out of context and sort of use those sort of cherry-picked words or phrases to amplify and sort of an anger and a fear-mongering in the community. But yeah, most people don't even read the books, and it doesn't matter to me if they read it or not. Freedom to read is it's a First Amendment right, and so either way, it's terrible. But it's a little more embarrassing, I think, that they don't even bother reading the books most of the time.
Yeah, and it's interesting. And do I have an echo? Because I hear myself.
I don't have an echo.
But I'm gonna probably.
Is it me? Should I put headphones on?
Headphones.
Yeah, I think
No,
there's an echo coming from you, Joe. Yeah, we'll try that again. But yeah, I'm always like, let's just get right into it because I feel like we're just living in this. Oh, my dog is so loud.
That makes me happy actually because it's not my dog.
I think there's somebody outside. He's a chocolate lab and he's just a noisy fellow, but I just feel like we're living in this bizarro world, and I feel like it's new to me, like seeing books being pulled off shelves. But I mean, you've been writing for a long time. Like, is this new to you? Have you seen this in your career? Like, what has changed lately?
It's new-ish. It's sort of like there's always an ocean of censorship and thinking children aren't whole people and shouldn't have the freedom to have access to read. But every now and then it crests in a wave, like anti-Semitism or any other sort of ism. And I think we're at an inflection point where it's become, I actually read something interesting about how, for a long time, people were beating the drum of anti-abortion to get votes out. And now that they got that, they need another demon to bring out the vote. And so it's books like pornography in our schools is a way to anger, the critical mass of people that the right wants to to motivate. So again, I don't think it's not that the books have categorically done something more subversive. Different types of subversions and of thinkings are happening in books that people are noticing, but people have always wanted to keep some books away from some people. But I think that the right has really gotten pretty good at leveraging fear focused in this area to drive up the vote. And sort of the same thing as with the terrible things that are happening, against our trans community is that, it's another thing that's sort of being fear mongered and, I don't know, what's weaponized for votes and attention.
Yeah. Yeah. Is my sound better now? Am I less echoey? Okay, cool. Sorry about that. Technology. Yeah, the fear mongering thing. I want to come back to that because it's so crucial. They're using these boogeyman words like pornography and obscenity. And you talked. I saw a speech that you gave where you talked about basically the threshold to meet that criteria. And it's not just some random nebulous word that's like out there in the universe. In order for a book to be found obscene or profane, they have to meet a certain bar, and they're not.
Yeah.
They're using those words anyway because nobody's going to challenge them, and it's scary, right? Like, can you talk a little bit about what it would actually entail?
So there's a 3-pronged test that was devised to decide if something is pornographic or obscene. And I don't have the 3 prongs in front of me, but one is that it deals with sexual material or something that could be offensive, which is very nebulous and vague because lots of ways to do that. And that's the one that they're saying, look, it's pornography because there's sex. But that's not true. One of the prongs that makes me sort of shake my fist is that it has to have, it has to be work without literary or artistic value. And to say that any of these books that they're banning that have been mostly obtained by, the big 5 publishers that have been vetted by industry professionals, worked on for many years with the artists and the writers and the editors and the copy editors and the publishers, and to make this beautiful thing, and then have been reviewed professionally, and then have been selected by professionals, librarians, for inclusion in their in their collections, to then be called without literary merit that's an obscenity. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous, and they're not dumb. Some of them are dumb, but some of them aren't. So they'll say, look, it fails the Miller test because maybe it does have sex in it, for example, or it talks about sexuality, or in some of the cases in some of my books it deals with abortion or a menstruation, or a character who wears whatever the occasion calls for. In the case of a picture book I wrote called What Riley Wore, which is often removed, and they'll hold that prong up and not even mention, that there's 2 other prongs that aren't applicable.
Right. Of course. But what if people are hearing?
It seems like if you think about it, of course we don't want to give our children pornography, but you think about the systems that are in place to select and craft a collection. It's so insulting to librarians. And in fact, this thing that I was at in Huntington Beach, they wanted to get rid of the pornography in libraries. And also they wanted to, the person who put this thing forward, who was the mayor pro tem of Huntington Beach, to disengage from the ALA, which is, first of all, ludicrous because the city is not engaged with the ALA. Individual librarians have memberships into the ALA. So, but the idea that they should distance themselves from a board of professionals, it's absolutely ridiculous. They don't think that librarians should be able to select books for their collections, but they do think that teachers should have guns in the classroom. I don't trust you to pick a book for my kid, but here's a gun. It's so nonsensical that it's enough to make flames shoot out of your head.
It is. And I just have to bring this up, and I don't know, all I know is from my experience with librarians, but my personal experience is that it's a field dominated by women.
Yeah.
That's what I think, but I don't know for sure. But I'm is there some, it's just we can't trust a profession dominated by women who go to schooling for this, who have an education for this, to make these decisions.
Absolutely. It's a form of misogyny. And it's doubly true. I'll just, as long as I'm here, say that that's true about sort of the way that we think about young adult literature and children's literature as not being real books in general too. We don't get the same press as sort of more literary considered novels because we're a field dominated by women, written for girls mostly, traditionally, although I'm very glad to say that our readership has expanded, and so has our pool of writers is more gender diverse than it's ever been. But I think it's the same dismissal of the the classification of literature that we write as the classification of jobs of the people who get to make the decisions about the books in the library. So I know that's off topic, but you gave me an in, so I took it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just an observation that
Yeah.
I'm like, I think it's something we have
I
to
think it's a smart one. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think we're talking about librarians. I think it's something Jill and I have definitely noticed is that librarians do not get the respect and the credit that they deserve. I mean, it's not like just somebody wakes up one day and decides that they want to, go be a school librarian. There's serious training involved. I mean, they're very deliberate about the books that they select. And obviously, they're not going to be intentionally
and they go through ongoing training throughout their careers and are involved in professional organizations. And librarians love to read, and they love, to learn, and they are, in my experience, consistent advocates for freedom and for their populations that they serve. They're there to serve their patrons. In my case, teens and children, and give them their First Amendment protected right to freedom to read.
Right, and you talk about the fact that you are the second most banned author in the United States, a distinction that I'm sure you don't want necessarily. People say all the time, oh, your books are banned, obviously they're going to be bestsellers and you're going to be a billionaire.
Yeah,
but you talk about
it's not true. So first of all, there's lots of ways to say who's the most banned, and it's certainly not a contest. Certainly not one any of us want to be in. So my books are not the most frequently, I have no individual title that's the most frequently banned. Genderqueer, I believe, unfortunately, this beautiful graphic novel has that, believe it has that designation, or maybe George Johnson's All Boys Aren't Blue is right up there as well. But I have 15 separate titles that have been banned or challenged. So under Ellen Hopkins, I have the most individual titles currently being banned and challenged. And no, it absolutely doesn't make my books a bestseller. In fact, usually what it does is it just means that I sell fewer copies of the books, because what happens to librarians, probably, I imagine, it probably would happen to me if I were a librarian, is that they start questioning what they bought. And, this last book that I bought by Elana K. Arnold, I almost got fired over. And so here's this new book that's coming out, and maybe I just won't select it. And so then this self-censorship starts. Oh, that was a beautiful book, but I don't know if I can afford to have it on my shelf because of the people who come in and bully me about these things. And so, yeah, every now and then there's, again, as a book that, everyone gets behind, like Mouse, which is one of my absolute favorite books. It's transformative to me as a Jew. My father was a Polish Jew whose father was a Holocaust survivor. And those books gave me so much empathy for my dad and his dad, and understanding. A fantastic book. And it's been, banned and removed many times. Oftentimes because there's sexuality in it, because there's naked corpses of mice that represent the Jews in a pile. And so like the abomination isn't the Holocaust, it's the breast. But anyway, that book, when it was announced that it had been banned, became a bestseller again, good for it. So, but that's sort of like the one out of thousands of our books that just quietly die.
It may. Oh yeah, I was going to say we interviewed Frederick Joseph, the author of The Black Friend and among other titles, and he was saying, having a book that's been banned, it also hurts when you're writing new books to get a publisher and different, because they're just trying to be safe. So it made me think of when you were talking about librarians.
Yeah, and school visits, because part of my income is almost entirely from a boy called Bat, which I love Bat so much. Bat is a kid with autism, an autistic kid who befriends an orphan skunk kit that he becomes determined to keep and care for. And it's often chosen, I'm very grateful, as a one school, one book read. And so the whole school will read the book, and that's fantastic. And, they would ask me to come talk about it. But I've seen those numbers drop as well, quite a bit. And that's a paid gig for me, is to go speak with the school about my book. But not just because of me, but because of the culture of fear around having authors come in general about, ooh, gosh, are we going to get in trouble for this? What's the community going to say? This author's, young adult work is banned, and now we're going to have her come talk to the kids, and people have been calling her other work pornography and obscene. Who are we to put this person in front of our kids? So it affects my career in a multifaceted way. As far as my publisher goes, I have been very, very fortunate that I work with incredible people at my different publishers, my YA, which is with HarperCollins, I have never had censorship from within. I have never had my editor, whose name is Jordan Brown, and he's a genius. I've never had him say, let's not put this in because it'll make it harder to sell. If we decide not to put something in, it's because it doesn't belong in the book from an art perspective, not a business perspective. So I'm very grateful that that hasn't happened. But I've heard other people's editors say, well, what if we just take out this one thing and then it'll make it easier? Well, what, do they have to be gay, the parents? Maybe they don't have to be. I've heard that from friends, that they've had that pushback from within their editing houses.
So you talked about what Mouse meant to you. You talked about how it impacted the way you saw yourself and your father's perspective a little bit. So my question is, because you've talked about this too, what happens to the kids who don't, when your books are taken off the shelves, when they can't see themselves or others in those pages? What are they missing about?
Mouse. I read Mouse when I was in college. I was a comparative literature student, and one of my professors handed it to me because he knew that I was Jewish and that my dad was a Polish Jew, and that his dad was I'm actually first generation. My dad came here as a child with his parents, when my parents had gone through a divorce, and I was very angry at my father for lots of really good reasons. But I didn't see him from an adult perspective. I was unable to see his trauma and the trauma that he had inherited from his father. And it also made me reevaluate my entire childhood, because I was in large parts raised by my wonderful grandparents who lived with this culture of fear, of keep your head down, of don't tell anybody you're Jewish. It's better if we can pass. Later in my life, when we decided not to circumcise our son, my grandfather told me, good, it'll make it easier for him to pass when the Holocaust comes again. So I was steeped in fear and, duck and cover mode. Like I was born in it. And I understood myself so much better when I understood my legacy and the relation. I had so much more empathy for my father, who still did some stuff that was not cool, but I had a context to understand the history of my heritage in a way that I didn't have before, and it allowed me to have more empathy. And that is what books do, right? Mm-hmm. Books give us an opportunity to have empathy, but they also give us an opportunity to have language for things that happen. So I have girls who come up to me after reading my book, What Girls Are Made Of, or my book Damsel, and tell me, I didn't know I was in a damaging relationship until I read your book. And my books are, Damsel it's a fairy tale, but it is about gaslighting and how sort of misogyny poisons all the waters, and how women can be complicit in the patriarchy to stay closer to power. And it's about a lot of those things. And I have people come up to me, and I over and over again, girls will come to me and tell me, I saw myself in your book. And I just I'm going to be so excited one day. I'm hopeful. People tell me, I have no idea what you're talking about. That is not my lived experience. I don't know anybody who's, why is she like that? I have no language to understand that. Far, far in the future, that would be fantastic news, but it hasn't happened yet. I still get letters weekly from girls and women who tell me that they see their experiences in my books and have language now to understand that the way their mother treats them is not okay, or the way that they've, given themselves entirely over to their boyfriend doesn't feel good, and they actually don't want to do that anymore. So I don't write books to teach lessons, honestly. I don't write books to make people feel seen, honestly. I write books because the books I write are because I don't have a terribly good imagination. And so I write about myself because that's what I know. And so I write about the things that fascinate, compel, terrify, inspire me, and I turn them into art. And if other people see themselves reflected in it, then that's an absolute honor. But I think I went off point with your question. I did my best.
No, I think I love the idea of writing from your own perspective, and I get it. I totally understand that. I think that for a lot of people, that makes sense. That's where I'm most comfortable too. I get that. But it's interesting because no matter what, people will find themselves in your content, right? And
right.
Depriving, especially teens, of that opportunity. To me, the same people who are saying that they stand for, parents' rights and standing up for our kids, protect our kids, are doing the opposite, right? Denying these young people, especially teenagers, again, these opportunities to have conversations that might be uncomfortable about subjects they may not have ever thought about, and suddenly they read something that you write and they're like, whoa, I see myself.
I think so, for sure.
That.
I see, like, I saw someone, they were wanting to remove Damsel from their collection, the fairy tale I was telling you about. And it was so smartly worded. They're like, well, other people don't even read the books, but we read the book. And we think this is a great book for parents to read. So parents can understand, what rape culture is. And then they could talk about it with their kid maybe. But the kids shouldn't read the book. It was the way this thing was phrased. So it shouldn't be in the collection. But parents, you should read this. So basically, they were saying, so you'll understand what your daughter's going through if she's been raped, but not that your kids should have access to it so that they know like what an unsafe situation feels like. It's the most insidious form of dehumanizing of young people, to deny them of the opportunity to almost like to practice consent with a book. Like, you pick up a book and you read something and it makes you feel uncomfortable. Guess what? You have the power and the right to put the book down and walk away. And that is powerful. When someone tells me, I started reading your book, but it really made me uncomfortable, and so I stopped, I'm like, that's a win. You experienced discomfort in your body, recognized you didn't want to be there, and you left. What if I, as a 15-year-old girl, had felt that I was worthy of recognizing discomfort in my body, getting up and leaving a room? Like, I did not know that I could or should do that, partially because of the era in which I was brought up in, partially because of my known neuroatypicality, partially because of my own parenting. But I didn't have the language to understand that I could be uncomfortable in a situation and protect myself even. And so I love that kids can read a book, or adults even, and have the opt-in, opt-out option of not consenting to be in the room with that book anymore. Fantastic. And this is something that these parents want to deny their children the opportunity to do, to practice consent.
That's such an interesting way to look at it. And Joe has 2 children. I have 2 children. My daughter's almost 14 years old. And I'm like, I respect her as a human being, and I respect her intelligence. And so I think denying, someone of that age, that's not the way I want to parent. And then also, I think I have an echo too. I don't know. I can hear it, but I don't hear whatever. It. Okay. I put the headphones in to try to help. But also where I was going with this is sometimes the parents aren't the safe ones.
Right.
So I've been in school board meetings where extremist school board member is talking about suicide prevention and just talking about how she wanted to get rid of the suicide prevention program we have, and that the safe place is at home, and she'd be talking to the parents. But I'm like, sometimes that's not the kid's safe place. And so sometimes school is the safe place. Reading a book is the safe place. And so taking that away is just creating more control and separation for kids. And it's really terrifying, honestly.
I think that's really, really well said and important. Yes, it's such a spot of complete self-centeredness to think that because things are a certain way in your house, that they're that way other places, and also even to believe that things are that way in your house, right? There are parents who really do believe they're providing the safest space for their kid, but the kid doesn't have that experience. And children are whole people. Children are not possessions. Children are not practice humans. Children are not ours. Now, oftentimes I think parents and people confuse ignorance with innocence. And they say, we want to protect our children's innocence. Like, no, you want to keep your kid ignorant. What is innocence? Innocence is not having had an experience. I don't want to force kids to have experiences, but I don't want to bubble wrap the world to keep them from having those experiences when they come across their plate. That's not innocence, that's ignorance. It's like when you hear white families say, well, we don't want to hear about racism because it makes our kids feel bad. Well, that's not innocence, that's ignorance. That's not understanding the actual world you live in. And the actual world we live in, unfortunately, is racist and sexist and anti-trans and homophobic. And I think getting better, but I am also coming from a specific, wedge of privileges that make me unable to see everything from my perspective too. But I don't know. I don't think innocence, I think oftentimes people say we're protecting kids' innocence. This means we want our kids to still believe in Santa Claus, and that is not innocence, that's ignorance.
It's almost as if they think that by restricting the access to this sort of to diversity and to culture, will attack the diversity in our culture that they don't want their children to be exposed to. And it's and the thing we know again about our kids, but also about humanity, is that they're going to find a way. You know, the world is going to find them, or they're going to find it some way or the other, whether or not it's in the pages of a book or on the internet or just in life. And they're really trying, like you said, I like this bubble wrap idea. They're trying to suppress all of that, to stop it, to stem it. And it's counterintuitive as far as community building goes, or culture. I mean, it's really interesting to me what they're trying, because if they're saying all of this is to protect our kids,
it doesn't.
At the end of the day,
it doesn't allow our kids to become connectors and connected, to make their circle smaller and darker. Books help us have empathy. Books give us an opportunity to safely try on identities. Books give us an opportunity to play. Books give us, for me, one of the things gave me was an escape. Books, like I'm sure everyone here probably believes these same wonderful things about books, but that's because they're true.
Exactly, because they're true. So I know you have a new book coming out, I think released in October. So can you tell us a little bit about that? We'd love to hear it.
Yes, it's called The Blood Years. And here's the cover. And it is my first historical novel. I've been working on this book for 10 years. So my grandfather's a Polish Jew, my grandmother is a Romanian Jew, and they met and married after the war. This is a book that is based on my grandmother's teenage years in Czernowitz, Romania, as a Jew before and during the Holocaust. And it's her story of growing up. It's really, truly also, it's a love story between sisters. It's a sister book. And it's about sort of how do you continue to live a life, or do you, when everything that made your life is sort of taken from you piece by piece by piece. What does it mean to live? And it's my mouse in a way, you know. I have never thought of that until just this moment, but it's my attempt to understand myself and the legacy I'm leaving to my children, and the state of the world now through the lens of looking at the real history of my grandmother, but also the other people from Czernowitz, Romania, who survived and were able to tell their stories, and the ones who didn't survive and whose stories will never be told. I like in writing this book to say my grandmother gave me this precious plate when she gave me this story, right? And the plate dropped and was shattered. And not only that, it was dropped and shattered into 6 million other plates. And my job was to sift through all the shards, all these beautiful, terrible shards, and try to find the pieces that were my grandmother's story, but also the pieces that could go with my grandmother's story. Everything in this book is true, whether it's my grandmother's story or if it's where I filled in blanks. It's real, true things that happened to other Czernowitzians and other Jews. Even the dreams the character had are based on a series of dreams that were recorded by a clandestine psychiatrist in the early years of the war, Jewish people's dreams in Germany, and snuck out of Germany. And it's this book of dreams. And so I used those dreams to spell. Everything is like a piece of those shards to make this new mosaic, this new thing called The Blood Years. And it comes out in October. And I'm very proud of it. And it is my attempt to bear witness to my grandmother's history and my culture's history, and also to this moment we live in. Because historical fiction is always about the moment in which it is being written. It's set in a different time, but the reason we're compelled to write it is because of the now. So I'm really excited to share this book. Again, my wonderful editor, Jordan Brown, helped me through 7 very difficult drafts to craft this book. So thank you for allowing me to talk. This is the first time I've gotten to really share it publicly. And I'm just very hopeful that the world will receive this book. After Germany, Romania is this country that killed the 2nd largest number of Jews during the Holocaust, and most people don't know that. Chernovitz, Romania is now a Ukrainian city. It's once again being invaded by Russians in the same way as it was when my grandmother was a teen. So this horrible sort of, when the Holocaust comes again sense that my grandfather carried with him until he died, we're seeing a lot of the same small-mindedness, the small hatreds towards Jews, but obviously also towards our trans brothers and sisters, Black people in our country, people of color writ large, LGBTQIA community. It seems like there's plenty of hate to go around. So I'm hopeful that this book will reach lots of communities.
Yeah.
It sounds incredible, and it really does speak to the power of the written word, the power, that books have, that I think what Mouse did for you and so many others, your book will then pay it forward and do for a whole new generation.
Well, that makes me want to cry. I really
I'm
hope
going to read
so.
it. I'm emotional.
Thank you.
Crier.
I think it's amazing. I am deeply, deeply proud of the work and the effort and the love that has gone into this book. Everything from my grandmother entrusting me with her story, to my siblings telling me what they knew, to just the incredible research I've done and the help of the Holocaust Museum in DC. There was a librarian there who helped me. There's a real survivor who's still alive from Chernovitz, Romania, whose name is Ruth Glassberg Gold. I read her memoir called Ruth's Journey, which you guys should all buy. It's up on Amazon now, about her, childhood and teen years coming out of Chernovitz. She read the book for me and has been a huge help. So really, it's like any real, a book starts with well, it doesn't really even start with me, because obviously the story happened long before I am, but it has become really, truly a community project in many ways.
I love that. And one thing, we always like to wrap up with is like asking the authors, like, how can we support you? And a lot of times they're like, buy our books. Like, that's a big support. So I know you have a lot of books already out there, and we have them on our bookshop. So if you go to redwine.blue, we've got a number of your titles up there. But also, I have heard that pre-ordering books is a really good way to help. So how can we pre-order this book that comes out in October?
Pre-ordering helps us helps the publisher know that the book is going to be a success, so they print more copies. It helps the bookstores know to give like actual shelf space to the book. So wherever you like to buy your books, I love independent bookstores. That's my go-to place. Barnes & Noble, even Amazon, anywhere that you buy books. If you would pre-order The Blood Years, that would be a great help to me, and I believe a great joy to you, because I think the book is a beautiful thing that I'm proud of. The other thing I'd love to offer is to tell you is that I teach classes online occasionally. I teach a class about once a year called Vision Season. It's a 6-week-long masterclass about finding and renewing our love of story and digging into ourselves from a variety of different perspectives to find a multitude of ideas from within us. And it's open right now for registration. If you go to visionseason.com, you can learn about it. And it has a limited enrollment space, and we're about half full. So if someone's interested, they can also email me at elana@elanakarnold.com, and I'll be happy to answer any questions about the class. If you're a teacher or a librarian who needs the support of an author and you'd like a copy of my speech that I gave the other night in Huntington Beach, I'd be glad to send you that or give you whatever else support I can. Librarians and teachers, I want you to know that we writers support you and love you and are sorry that, yours are the addresses and the faces that are probably on the front line for people who are violent, scary, awful bullies, bigots, and Nazis. And, I apologize that you have to, in many cases, be the face of a fight that you didn't sign on for when you went to library school. It's a fight we're all fighting, and I'm just, my Nana would be just horrified if she were alive to know that this is where we are. Recently, I saw my name on a list. It said, for a book I wrote called The House That Wasn't There, and it said, the book isn't problematic, but it has a problematic author. So now not only are they targeting individual works, they're putting names on lists, authors who are problematic. And I can tell you, when they put our names on lists, it hasn't gone well in the past. So it's an important time for everyone to stand up and be loud, even though we're scared. I'm scared.
Yeah. Yeah, I think exactly. It's an important time for all of us to use our voice and be loud. And that's why we have these conversations.
And thank
like this,
you
for sure.
that. I appreciate it so much. I don't have like thousands and thousands of Instagram followers. This is a huge opportunity for me to tell you all about where I am and what's going on in my head and in my work. And I really appreciate that. That said, if anybody else has a big platform who happens to be watching today, here I am, very much wanting to tell you that I am available and interested in this conversation and others like it. Yeah, so please write to me.
Yeah, and when the book is out, we'll do another one of these. And I just want to let everybody know we've had conversations with about 7 or 8 authors, and we save the conversations on IG and we put them on our website as well. So you can find them all on IG. You can find them on our website. We have something called Book Ban Busters on our website where you can figure out how to get involved. You can take some online trainings. We have a banned bookmobile project we're working on. So we are here for you. And we just appreciate this conversation. And Joe, is there anything else you want to add?
No, I'm so inspired by you, by your story of, you know, your grandmother, and I think the value of these conversations cannot be overstated. So I'm just incredibly grateful to you for your voice, for your passion, for your art, and for your advocacy.
Thank you,
so
both.
I personally wanted to thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the chance and for reaching out to me. I'm a person who sits in a bubble turned inward most of the time. And so these things are like, these always make me like sweat the stinky sweat. But there's nothing more worth it to stand up for than for, you know, humans' right to access books. And children are humans. They are full people. They have rights that are being trampled on, sometimes by their parents.
Yeah. That's true. And I just have to do another plug. I'm like, you were just like saying all the things that we're about at Red, Wine, and Blue, because we have a campaign called Freedom to Parent that we just launched. And it's exactly what you're saying. It's like, our kids are individuals and we have the right and they have the right. And so definitely everybody check out redwine.blue. We're in this together. So I don't know. We just got to keep using our voices. Yeah. So thank you for joining. Thank you, everybody. And have a good afternoon.
All right. Bye, guys. Thanks for coming.